Hello and welcome to this special program on Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka-India relations. They're always a bit tenuous, a bit suspicious, and there may not be any ground for it, or there may be. And nobody better to talk to us about Sri Lanka and its relations with India than the person who's fourth time Prime Minister, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Thank you very much. I guess this suspicious relationship always happens between two neighbors, and at the moment the core of the problem or the suspicion is the port called Hambantota, right? And people say that when you used to oppose that port and it was only 750 acres, now that you're Prime Minister, this is the charge. Now that you're Prime Minister, you went to China personally and you negotiated and gave them 15,000 acres. How much of that is true and how much is not?
No, I had to first refute the charge because the peoples to people relations between Sri Lankan and Indians are excellent.
Yes.
I meet them here, I meet them in India, we get on well.
I've been to Sri Lanka, I love it, and people are very friendly.
The government to government relations are working out well. The
politicians are always a problem.
The problem is not the politicians. The media on both sides are playing up. The Sri Lanka media says we are having economic and technological agreement with India. India is going to take us. All their labor is going to come into Sri Lanka. And the Indian media says, look, we have sold the country out to the Chinese. A is that Sri Lanka knows how to maintain its independence, how to look after its friendship with India, and how to have its friendship with the rest of the world. Which
so you say media's problem, media says politicians are the problem. People are fine.
Even politicians are not. I mean, I met two of your politicians, ministers yesterday.
Yes.
All sides I meet with them.
Yes.
The media. First and foremost, the Hambantota harbour was developed by former President Rajapaksa.
Yes.
Who was fully backed by part of your government and media and given the credit for having crushed the LTT.
And you opposed it.
And for having taken, he took an Exim Bank loan and developed the harbour and the airport. But the problem was that no ships were coming, because you can't have a harbour, doesn't mean ships coming, there must be a cargo. There must be a ship load, cargo to load and unload.
Right.
And you couldn't, all your agricultural products are going out of Colombo, all your factories were there. So we call this the biggest swimming pool in the world. I called it
biggest swimming pool in the world.
That's all that you could do it for. And we said we can't pay it. We were not going to pay it, and we opposed it. So once President Maithripala Sirisena took over and we formed the government, we looked at the numbers. Actually, Mahinda Rajapaksa's finance ministers opposed the deal at that time, telling Exim Bank it couldn't be paid. So we had negotiations with the Chinese. Then I led a delegation of ministers to China, where I met with both the Prime Minister and also with President Xi. Right. And we were looking at, we said we couldn't pay, either we had to default or
so we had to come with some badly in debt. Yeah.
And so final arrangement was that let there be a debt to equity swap, and Chinese companies will be encouraged to bid for it, and if the conditions were right, the Sri Lanka government could then have a joint venture and give whatever the shares the Chinese side wanted, and the rest that Sri Lanka.
But did you not do a U-turn from opposing it, calling it a swimming pool, to making it 15,000 acres?
There was no 15,000 acres.
Right.
Of the two bidders, it was given to China merchants, and they wanted 1,300 acres because they want to make it the container terminal, international container terminal for Indian Ocean. We went to Shenzhen. They showed us the operation. That was going to be a mini one because of the Chinese activity and the shipping that they said was going to increase.
So what is the 15,000 acres? That's the hinterland of the core.
We also had to develop cargo from Sri Lanka.
Right.
And that meant that we needed, according to the Chinese, at least 2,000 factories, large ones. We also felt we needed 2,000 to 3,000 factories depending on the size. Then looking at the land for the factories, the industrial estates, the roads, the water supply systems, the warehouses, then housing for the additional people, town, you needed about 15,000 acres of land had to be available
Right.
if there is going to be a success.
So it is 15,000 acres.
Non-start, 15 had to be available to the government of Sri Lanka
Right.
to make available
That's the
to
key.
investors,
Right.
to the provincial councils to start schools.
So the correct
Yeah.
picture is 15,000, but even India can invest there. is it?
Anyone can invest.
Right.
So we had done this earlier. Under the Mahavali authority, we had about 300,000 acres reserved by the government,
Right.
given to settlers and to the private sector.
Right. So tell me, you
Yeah.
want India to come into Sri Lanka?
We want India to come in, and with
But
China.
why are they not coming then, India? What is
Because-
happening?
no,
Is there likelihood that something will happen by the end of this
It
year?
will happen. There are 2-3 issues. One is we want to complete the economic and technological cooperation agreement
Yes.
between India and Sri Lanka, where we envisage closer cooperation with the 5 southern states, us and with Singapore.
So you want to create a kind of economic region,
Yes.
for like the Eurozone for Sri Lanka, Singapore, and southern states of India.
They are not a eurozone, more like the market facilities.
Yes.
And so it's not 15,000 acres there. Then you can say I have given I have given Sri Lanka out. I am taking so much out of India to Sri Lanka. So because that's the traditional. That's the traditional.
So how
cultural
far is
economic-
this happening?
So I've suggested Indian government, once we finish the ECTA agreement,
Right, which
it
will happen when?
It had be before mid this year.
Mid this year.
Yeah, because we just finished the GSP plus arrangements for entry into EU. We are also doing 2 other agreements, one with Singapore, another with China. We followed by one with ASEAN and another with Japan and with Bangladesh. So we are covering the whole area, and we become a platform for competitive value addition and a platform
this
for
one-
logistics.
I'm very interested in the southern states, Singapore and Sri Lanka. That will be completed already by when?
No, we start talking once the agreement is signed.
The agreement will be signed by mid this year,
Yeah.
you're saying?
Then I'm
And
already talking with Andhra Pradesh, with Chandrababu Naidu.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
meeting him tomorrow.
Right.
But we started discussions there.
Okay.
And we want a joint venture with Andhra Pradesh Industrial Infrastructure
Right.
Limited to provide the for industrial estates for Indians, for others, for even for
You're
Chinese.
getting a good response from
Yes.
India?
Yeah, we
And
have-
this will happen, it's not a
Yes.
dream.
And now we also talk with India to develop Trinco as the main harbour for the Bay of Bengal.
That will
But
happen?
That will happen. There are no sunken costs. We don't require breakwaters.
Okay.
But at the moment, the whole of Trinco is being planned out by Sabana Jurong, which is also doing Amaravati.
Right.
And once that plans are done, and there will be large areas of tourism, then with India, and hopefully Japan will also take a stake in it. And that means Trinco becomes a harbour. Indians are also interested in other projects in Sri Lanka, which we are talking with them, especially in the northern area.
So if a Indian government senior most, say Prime Minister Modi walked in and you say, what would you say to him? How would you speed this up? What would you say to him? Are there any hurdles?
No, it's getting our agreements through, and for our end it's more the non-tariff barriers that has to be worked out. But we start with Andhra
Right.
as the first example, and Telangana is also interested. So we start there. Kerala, we are talk with Kerala about common tourist program. So we've got to all.
So now people question about how you have tied up the president, and you have a semi-presidential system. You have a president who's elected directly, Mr. Sirisena, and parliament with 225 seats, is it? And you're the prime minister, and you're in opposition parties. You have different ideologies. He's more left of center, you're more right of center, but you still, is it functioning?
Yes, he is a common candidate of alliance,
Yes.
of which the other 2 parties sit in the opposition, TNA and the JVP.
Yes.
But once he became president and as prime minister, we said we have to somehow bring the SLFP in. Just 5 years
Yes.
to make a difference.
Yes.
And at the moment it's working. I think it will hold.
You have, but different ideologies, different views, you manage.
We are managing, it's better than having opposition in charge of the upper house blocking your legislation. We have arguments, but at the end of it we work things out.
You have a good relationship or quite tough arguments?
It's a workable relationship.
You wouldn't call it the best you've ever had, but a good
No,
workable.
I don't think it can be. I mean, both these parties are going to contest each other at the next elections.
Correct.
But some of the Indian businessmen said, why can't our 2 main parties get together? I said, you go there and ask from Delhi.
All right. And what is Mr. Rajapaksha doing at the moment?
He leads one of the factions in the SLFP which calls itself the joint opposition, and well, actually the only protest against Hambantota was led by him, so we've all been, the whole country is having
Who
good
he
laugh.
started.
Yeah,
He named it after himself, right?
Yeah, and
I mean,
yeah, he named it after himself.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he's protesting.
Rajapaksha Port.
Yeah.
Are you going to keep the name or are you going to change the name?
So if he doesn't want the port filled, I thought we'll build a large swimming pool and name it after him.
That's really mean. Are you going to change the name of the port?
I haven't decided on that. I want goods. I want a working port.
You might change it, you may not.
I have not decided. That's the opposite. I
Right.
want a port that works.
Now, what about the conditions of the Tamils and the northern part, about the rehabilitation and
The rehabilitation work is going on,
Going on.
but we need more help there. We need about $1 billion, which I hope the Western countries will help us to put the northern economy on its footing.
but they say there's still some suppression and it's a
There is
bit,
no suppression.
No?
This goes on well. Yes,
yeah. You visit there often.
I visit there. In fact, the president has been about 10 times last year.
And you don't find people are happy, or
People are happy,
There's
but they want
discontent.
they want the.
they want to
As you said, there are a large number of war combatants. There are women-headed households. There are a lot of people are psychologically affected by the last stages of the war.
right.
And the fact is that villages have been uprooted not once, twice, thrice, and putting the social fabric back in the one knee. That's another issue.
So there's a lot of work still to be
A
done.
lot of work. Some is going to take a long time, but we need that capital to give it. Otherwise, it will always keep lagging behind the other.
Are you going to
big-
get it, this capital?
So we want to ask the donors to help us just in Jaffna. India is going to help us on the infrastructure work, so that's good. And if
but
you
you're
want
focused
housing-
on that,
Yeah.
rehabilitation. And all. Just to show you some graphs on inclusive development, on equity, and Sri Lanka does very well on that. In fact, out of 80 countries, Sri Lanka is 9th in the top 10, which is much better than many of the countries in your neighborhood. How have you achieved this, and what lessons can other countries get from that inclusive development?
Actually, we had a setback because of spending on the war,
Yes.
but otherwise we've been focusing a lot.
Yes.
I still feel there are sectors where we are not getting value for money.
Right.
But on the other hand, now we are going to make 13 years of education compulsory,
Okay.
and we'll bring an upper secondary vocational stream, and we give tablets to all the students in the last 2 years, and insurance to all the students in the schools. So this way we are focusing on what is essential. We are trying to
Education is a big focus.
it is big
is it?
one, housing.
Now, another area which you're not doing well, and neither is anybody in South Asia, is gender inequality.
We are worried.
Huge problems.
We are
Out
very
of
concerned.
144 countries, Sri Lanka is 100th. And India is 87th, Bangladesh 82nd, Nepal 110th, Sri Lanka 100th. You know, all South Asian countries, gender inequality is terrible.
I know this is the issue, but in some areas like education we do quite well,
Yes, but
but others aren't. So we are addressing this, and we are trying to have reserve 25% of the representations in local authorities for women,
okay.
and we are backing the women's caucus in parliament. Lot more work has to be done, and
And your wife is quite focused on this area,
she-
gender
she-
inequality.
She is focused. She is working on it.
So if your wife, if a woman is doing it, there's something will get done.
There are many women working on it.
Right, good, good. One more, in terms of competitiveness and ease of doing business, which is an area you would really
Yeah.
like to focus on. Sri Lanka is pretty poor on that.
Yeah, I know.
Out of 138 countries, Sri Lanka is 71st.
No, we
And India is
yes.
2039.
No, we waited. I think by March we are getting the Center for International Development is giving us ease of doing business,
Right.
and we are benchmarking ourselves on the Malaysians.
You
We
are.
are looking at Malaysia, and I said benchmark yourself on Malaysia. So by next year you find a lot of changes.
So you're saying you're welcoming India. They will be in a port soon that they can even invest their factories. We can invest factories in even in the so-called Chinese port, and there's nothing to be worried about China taking it.
Nothing to be worried. Yes,
I
it's
think
coming
that
there.
clarif-
Yes, and then there'll be the
and it's not going to be a-
Trinco port is there. We've asked them for help in making Palali airport.
And it's not going to be a 15,000 acre swimming pool.
It's not a no, it won't be a swimming pool at all.
Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for your candid comments. Good luck, sir.